Own the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour, brought to you by Mueller. Coming up on this episode.
We're always looking for touchstones, and I think when you look back, you say, it's really not that different. We're all still trying to do our best.
We, the people of the United States of America.
Hi, and thanks for joining us for On the Road with Kelly and Bob. I'm Kelly Phillips.
And I'm Bob Phillips. This is a special year-long edition of our show, the USA 250 Tour. It's a celebration of the 250th birthday of the United States of America.
For all of 2026, we'll be finding one story of significance in each of the 50 states and sharing that story with you. This week, we start out in New Hampshire.
And that's where we found a little building on the side of the road that is the home to the Old Farmer's Almanac, an American institution that's been around since the late 1700s. It's run by a small but mighty band of almanac devotees, including its latest editor.
I'm Carol Kinnear. I'm editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, and this is my dream job.
Carol Kinnear thinks she may have been born to do this job, if it is a job at all.
It's hard for her to think of anything she doesn't like about it, including the state where it's located.
What I love about New Hampshire is the mountains and the lakes. I'm a big hiker. You can get out into the middle of nature so quickly in New Hampshire, and I think that's a gift. I was born in New Hampshire, not too far from here in Bedford, New Hampshire. When I was a kid, I always had the Almanac and Yankee magazine actually in our home. I went to school for journalism and communication, and I came and worked for Yankee magazine when I was around 30. And so I was here for 5 or 6 years at that time on the other side. And then I spent 20 years at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And I did publications and fundraising, and I worked at the library. When this job came open, my daughter was a senior in high school, and so I could leave Massachusetts and come home. And so I applied for the job, and I got it 2.5 years ago, and it has been awesome.
So you ask, what exactly is the Old Farmer's Almanac?
Well, according to their website, it's, and I quote, a long-running annual publication first published in 1792, known for its traditional mix of weather forecast, astronomical data, gardening advice, recipes, and folklore, presented with a distinctive, humorous tone.
Okay, got it, I guess. But what is it?
Well, it's a book that dates back to the early days of the USA, when our country was young and most people were farmers. It is the oldest continuously published periodical in North America today.
Wow. And now it's been around so long that its story truly is a part of America's story. But don't get the wrong idea. The Old Farmer's Almanac is not just for farmers. No, not anymore.
So our founder, Robert B. Thomas, was really a genius. In America, in 1792, when he started his almanac, 90% of employed people were in agriculture. Today, that's 1.6 to 1.8, and that includes forestry and fishing. It's a different world. But before that, there were almanacs. Many people know Poor Richard's Almanac, Ben Franklin's Almanac. Thomas really regarded Franklin as the standard bearer, like that his almanac really had been the best. In fact, he's on the cover of our almanac. We have America's first great almanac maker, Ben Franklin, and the second, Robert B. Thomas. But Thomas was only 26 at the time. He was a school teacher, a bookbinder from Massachusetts. But his whole thing, I have it up on my wall, is useful with a pleasant degree of humor. He felt like it needed to entertain.
And entertain it does. But the Old Farmer's Almanac is also chock full of useful information.
In fact, lots of people depend on it and have since it all began.
At that time, you have a Bible in the house, an almanac. You might be starting to get some of those early broadsheets, but very little reading material. So an almanac, by its name, almanac is a calendar. And so it has something for every day of the year. In our calendar section, you'll see we have holidays and tides and fun snippets of poetry and things about the season, really about growing. And so, yeah, I think this idea that his was going to be entertaining was big and also correct. So at the time, there was 500 almanacs in America. And by 1832, there were way less. A lot of them had folded. We had survived.
There were times in the Old Farmer's Almanac's past that this more than 230-year publication almost didn't make it.
Yeah, like the time an enemy spy was captured with a copy of the book.
That almost didn't happen because during the war in 1942, the FBI came calling. They had found a Russian spy on Long Island had been picked up, and he had an almanac in his pocket. And so the FBI was like, you can't publish forecasts. No. And they thought the forecasts were just such sensitive information. They wanted the almanac to stop publishing, but he had just bought the almanac in 39, Robert Sagendorf. He said, they're just weather indications. We're going to call them indications. And so he was able to keep publishing.
And even a future president is thought to have made use of the Old Farmer's Almanac to prove his court case.
Another famous story is that Abe Lincoln used the almanac to free a man. He was charged with murder. And Lincoln brought in his almanac. The person who identified him said, I could see him clearly under the light of the moon. But that night was a new moon.
No moon.
So there was no moonlight to see the suspect.
In this day, when digital everything has mostly replaced printed anything, well, it may seem strange that a printed book is updated and published each and every year.
But the Old Farmer's Almanac is a lot more than just weather forecast and astrological folklore. It is a national treasure, a reassurance that what was can still be today. It's a link to our past, a history of our country.
And to the people who keep this journal going, it is a time-honored duty to make sure it doesn't go away.
How does that feel, doing what you do and having the history you have here in New Hampshire, to be able to head up something like this that's been around so long and has been meaningful in people's lives?
It's an incredible feeling. It's a big responsibility. We have a small but mighty staff. People are so invested in their work. And also, we're old school. We fact check. And I think people trust us. It feels more like a relationship with our readers. And I think that's just this relationship that has been ongoing since the beginning. And so I think this idea that the recipe works, people trust us, but we need to really do our due diligence. And then on the other side, we're making widgets. We're a company. We're supporting families. We're supporting employees with a point of pride, too. And so we're very creative. We do the almanac, but we do calendars, and we do a garden guide every year. We do books. Really, it's kind of a cross between reference, but also entertaining. It must be useful. It must be right, but it also should bring joy. So those are big responsibilities, I would say. And I think we work really hard to get it right, and that hard work feels good.
I love that word touchstone. This is that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is for a lot of people, and people discovering it too, and just think they're part of something greater. Like I said, when people write to us, it's like they're already in relationship with us. So that idea is such a privileged idea. But I think when you say, what is the role? It's just that we have been in relationship with our readers that whole time. So they're telling us. I think that is really the almanac magic to me.
Kelly, when we visited the Old Farmer's Almanac's offices there in the New Hampshire countryside, I think you could probably see that I was really feeling a connection to the folks there.
Yeah, that was obvious, but why is that?
Well, a couple of reasons. In some ways, what they do is at least somewhat similar to the TV show that I did for more than 50 years, especially that relationship with the viewers like they have with their readers. And then I remember when I was in journalism school in college, and my professor said to us, "Kids, the best two places you could hope to work as a journalist would be, 1, Reader's Digest, and 2, the Old Farmer's Almanac." Now I can see why he told us that.
Well, Carol had a lot more to say about this magical place where she works. So let's pick up that conversation.
The idea of taking care of all that tradition, is just something that appealed to me, I think, after being in libraries as well and working a lot in archives and understanding what was here better than I had the first time around. But for me personally, I am a crazy rabid gardener. So I love to garden. And so that's what makes this job also a great fit for me. Until I came here, I was really a perennial flower and vegetable gardener, herbs, flowers and vegetables. But when I came here, I bought a property last year. It's a mini orchard. It's a food
orchard.
Forest. It's tiny. I live on half an acre, but I've probably got 40 fruit trees.
Oh my
Of all
gosh.
different kinds, pawpaws and shrubs too, like gooseberries, but I have pears, I have cherries, I have plums, and on and on. And so at almost 60, it's like completely learning again how to garden.
Okay, I've got to know.
Okay.
Since you're a gardener and you've got the orchard and all that, do you consult your own almanac?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love to go back because, we have 234 years and we've written about fruit trees when it was like, how do we do this in New England to, really expertise now? How do we revive an old orchard, So yeah, there's lots of useful things. And almanac.com is also amazing.
On this program, we're not so much into how widgets are made. That's your business. But I am curious if you have any idea how, when he first started doing the almanac, Mr. Thomas forecast the weather and all of those other things. Was it just historic data? Do we even know where he got all that?
We do.
Really?
We still use his formula. So Thomas was an astronomer.
You still use his formula?
We do.
Oh my God.
So let's back up a little
That's
bit. Long
great.
range weather forecasting is silly. I mean,
Well,
right?
sure.
We can
Yeah.
barely get the short range right. It's getting better, but
Right.
But why would we do that? And of course, again, it's this idea of growing. If I'm going to support my family and I'm growing our food, I need to get it right. And so, what can my leg up be? Am I planting by the phases of the moon, like indigenous people always did? Am I going to know the weather? Is it going to be a dry? Do I have any indications of that? And so that's why it's important. But so Thomas was an astronomer, and he, in his particular formula, and some long range forecast formulas that I've seen do more in thinking about planetary science overall, but he was really looking at the sun. And this, the Chinese have been looking at the sun cycle for 1,000 years. Galileo had his telescope in 1609, but Thomas comes along and he's really interested in these 11 to 13 year cycles of the sun, the storms on the sun, and they can see them. And so, it makes a lot of sense because it's the amount of radiation being put off by the sun that goes in this cycle. So of course that impacts our weather. But you're right, it's data. So we have a lot of data, and now we have computers that can really crunch that data. So it's a lot of science. I mean, there's climatology now. There's of course meteorology, which they're meteorologists. But then we take this idea of the pattern of the sunstorms and crunch that all down, and that's how we make our predictions.
What do you hear from people, especially people who are farmers, gardeners, that sort of thing? What kind of feedback do you get from them about the almanac?
We talk to people all the time out there in the world, and we're always on radio shows, and like I said, people writing into us, and we hear that people are really freaked out about the weather, about how it affects their growing. There's been a lot of changes in patterns in the last 10 and 20 years. The USDA hardiness zones all ticked up a half, some places a whole zone. And so, but at the same time, the jet stream is really slowed. And what that means is these polar shots, the polar vortex, can shoot really far south. Snow in Savannah last year. We actually predicted snow in the south last year because of these patterns we're seeing.
Wow. Is there a story to be told by just looking at the cover? I'm just curious about where does all of this come from that's on the cover? Because in a way it's like a painting, but then as I look at it,
you see Franklin, you see Thomas.
Yeah, it looks like it's good storytelling just on the cover.
And I am not brushed up on my history of the artwork of the cover, but I can tell you a few things.
Okay.
That we redid it in 2017, I think, was that our 225th, and had everything restyled and drawn into the original, just to make these, because these were like block prints, these seasons. So of course we show the seasons because that's really what we are. We're a calendar of the seasons. And then of course Robert B. Thomas and Benjamin Franklin being the fathers of almanacs. And then this, that the idea that the cover doesn't change is something that I think is really weird, but like, that's us.
That's so
This is what people expect.
The little yellow book.
Yeah, but if you change this.
So in 1938, Roger Scaife is the editor with Little Brown and Company, and he takes out the weather forecast.
What?
He just puts in averages, temperature averages. So we dropped from 225,000 subscribers in 1938 to 88,000.
Oh my gosh.
Year.
Why did he do this? Did he ever explain that to anyone?
And please tell me he only lasted 1 year.
He put him back in for 39 and 40, but it was like Little Brown wanted out by that point because there had been such a precipitous drop. And that's when Rob Sagendorf, who brought it to New Hampshire, bought it in 1939. So, so the 1940 had, because we do a year ahead, had been out. So yeah, people want it like it is. They want it to stay the same, but also have new ideas.
Tell us about your subscribers.
We have 100,000 subscribers to our hardcover edition, almost 100,000. I think it's in the 90s. And people can get this as a subscription with our garden guide, but we have 2.5 million copies that we put out in different formats. This is our classic format with the hole. We have a bookstore edition, which is a little bigger and brighter, no hole. We've got a large print edition. We do Kindle. We do a Canadian edition. So there's quite a few ways you can get it however you want it. But for printing, we do 2.5 million. And so what do we know about those people? So we know that many of them have taken the almanac for 10 or more years, the majority, and many that are over 20-year takers of the almanac every year. We know that they're generally in their 50s. That's the average age, but we know that we have a lot older people as well. And then we also know that most of them really enjoy growing their own food, even if it's like pots on their patio, or they have really the big vegetable garden, but sort of this idea of being in touch with nature through growing. And so we know that, the average is they have a little backyard garden. So we know this. So it's kind of the kitchen garden of old, of new, And then really, when you look at the income levels of people that read the almanac, it's all over the map. But, because we're so affordable, people that are on fixed incomes can still afford it. So, we look at that, our demographics, it's kind of incredible to see, that there's, many lower income folks who really trust the almanac. And again, there's lots of money saving tips in there, so why not?
Yeah.
But, we see that really runs the gamut. We came out before medicine was really trustworthy.
Yeah.
And so people were looking at astrological, indications for health. But then also home remedies, really our traditional remedies, and those have always been in here, which was more trusted than anything else at the time. But I think to your dad and other, we're really the only place that people can get the information about planting by the moon. So what does that mean? And that's really governing the best days chart, which is like best days to make sauerkraut, best days to start a business, best days to perm your hair, if that's still a thing. I was like, maybe we could take that out. I don't think
No, you can't.
Okay, we're leaving it in.
Yeah, you got to leave it in.
No.
Best day to mow your lawn to encourage growth. Best day to discourage growth. So what does that mean? And we have a real life wonderful astrologer, Teresa Reed, who does our work for us in this realm. And it's very simplest when you're planting by the phase of the moon. We all know that the moon changes tides. So it's pulling water. It's a gravitational thing. So what does that mean for the grower? So it means when the moon is waxing and it's growing in light, water in the earth, in our dirt, is moving upward in the soil. So it's being drawn upward. Whereas when we have a waxing moon, the moisture even in our plants, in us, the waning moon, that means that's going to really be drawing water down into the earth. So that's great for root vegetables. So when you think about why do we plant by this or that, it's because above ground crops we want to plant in the waxing, the growing moon, because that really amplifies their goodness, and then underground crops we do in the waning. Moon.
You just answered a long time question. My dad's been gone since 1997, but I never understood why he insisted on planting his potatoes at a certain time, and you just told me.
In the waning moon.
In the waning moon.
Definitely. And so, but why would people feel particular about that? Because it gives you an edge, right? Any edge you can get, when you think about. So that's the old ways, is like, my crops are going to do better if I pay attention to that. And then also the traditional, like I think most farmers kind of want to hedge their bets. So
it's money. It still boils down to money.
It doesn't cost me any more to plant when the moon's phase is correct.
No.
Typically, if it did, I might just make another decision. But if I can plan that way, or my peas or whatever it is, I'm going to do it, because why not? It could work. I think there's some people that just do it because their parents did it that way.
How long do you think this can go on?
I see a younger audience finding us, and so I hope forever. This idea that people, it's not like a refusing of technology, but it's a seeking of something else. And maybe that idea of old, we can also say tradition, or we can say, the way things were, or old ways, or, we always say old-fashioned and newfangled. We're always looking at new things too, and that's also the history of the Almanac, is what's the newest technique for growing corn or gladiolus or whatever it is you want to do. So I think that idea, but this younger audience, things that have always been in the Almanac, like astrology or folklore, younger readers really want that. And more than once this year, particularly when I've met with the younger people, they always talk about, it smells so good. It's like a book. You open the pages, it really smells good. And
it's because it's a book.
Yeah, it's not a screen.
Exactly. You can open it, smell it, touch it.
It is a book.
Yeah, and to step away from the screen, I think we all know is a health issue these days. And so, we're not unlucky that it's a similar size to one of the biggest phones. It's like it still can be held in your hand. So I think those are just some things that make us, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's skill. But I think, this idea of a hankering for something that was here long before, and will still be here for a while. I think like many things in the growing space, COVID and the pandemic, our readership soared. And then it kind of came back down and leveled off to higher than where it was, which is great. But I think there is still this idea. But I think people are really money conscious right now.
Yeah.
And so, they don't want to invest too much, but they also want to get a lot of return. And again, so this, it's a low investment. If you say that it's good for every day of the year, and then is it going to help me kind of think of some ways that, I can be in charge, maybe get fresh food. We know how much our groceries are costing us. But also just ideas for just how to be frugal around the house and use things you've got. We have a whole reference section about around the house or gardening, and for entertainment too.
So tell us about this right here, the little hole, and then I'll tell you a quick story after that.
Okay.
Where did this come from and why?
So that's been there since a long time ago. I don't remember what year, but it costs a lot of money to drill that. But people don't want to not have that. Like some people say, I got the wrong edition. Like I don't have the hole, and they think that we've duped them.
And the hard copy didn't have a hole.
Exactly, because we do have many different formats, and so the bookstore edition doesn't have that, and the hard hardcover edition. So this is our trade edition, and it's the one that you'll see in grocery stores and hardware stores, and that's why. I mean, my nephew has a little horse farm in Kentucky, and he loves sending me a picture of that hanging on a nail in his barn.
It's
so
hang
easy.
like this, obviously, except for Leon Phillips, my
Your dad.
He figured that if it hung like that, and as much as he used it and thumbed through it constantly, and it hung there all year long, right? Well, it got to where it would sometimes do like this, especially in a humid situation. So what did he do? He drilled another hole right here and had it hanging.
I love this.
Yeah, where all of his gardening tools were. It was hanging on 2 nails right there. So and if you look at it, I thought at the time, well, he just ruined part of it. No, there's nothing in that space right there.
Leon, I love Leon.
Modified the old farmer's
It made it even
almanac.
better. That's so great. That's the spirit of the almanac right there. I love that.
That's the kind of people, and my dad would not plant without consulting this.
I think we're going to keep on doing it like we've always done it, but, our ear to the ground. Like, we make changes all the time. Not quickly in the almanac, though. We're just always listening to our readers. So any changes we make, it's really kind of, maybe we've seen a lot of questions on that. Maybe we need to rejigger that or do a story on that. One thing we kept hearing was about harvest and how to preserve the harvest. I know I'm growing my own food, but canning, maybe I don't know how to can, but there's other things, how to make it last, right?
Yeah.
So we just did a big reference section on that. The other one is companion planting. We hear a lot about, I want to understand like what's good to plant together and what's not. And so that had really been folklore. So we just went and did a survey of all the science out there and are building new charts, and we'll do another feature on that. So I think the things that we change are drawn out of readers' interest or, what we're hearing. And, I think with AI and on the web, a big move we've made is we're doing a lot more tools, because that's not really an AI area of great expertise. So
Right.
I want to put in some raised beds, or I want to do container plants. Well, we have a tool. How big of a pot do I need for tomatoes? How much mulch do I need? Here's a simple calculator. Same goes for like how much do I need in a raised bed, and so you can just put in the measurements. Or for your zip code, when is my average first frost or last frost? All that's tools we have online, because we know that that's a carryover. People want the info, they want to know. Again, make a decision.
So this is print. It's expensive to do. And things are going, magazines go out of business, newspapers go out of business. Is there any chance that this will not be in print at some point? But
It
we'll
lasted
still have it
200 plus years.
Yeah, I know, but it's a new world, y'all.
I know. I think for us, we don't see that. We do see a demand for the print, and you'll be taking home a big bag of products, and our customers, they like print. They tell us they like print. And it's fine to have all of the other pieces that are digital, because people like that too, but they keep coming back to this. I think it is that idea that we've been continuously published, so when you can look at it, I feel very blessed that I can go to my shelf and look back and just say, when's the first time we started writing about asparagus? Or whatever. There's so many topics like hay. We write about hay a lot, or manure. And this idea of keeping track of what's been happening really in agricultural America, because we have lost touch. Like I said, we went from 90% of people being in the growing industry to 1.6% of us.
Yeah.
And so that big change. So what does this mean? It's this idea that we can look back and say what was inspirational to us 200 years ago, what was commanding our attention. And I think that's important, because we're always looking for touchstones. Like, what are we doing today? How much, and I think when you look back, you say, it's really not that different. We're all still trying to do our best and find joy and live well. I think it's about living well every day.
How long will you stay here?
Ooh, so Robert B. Thomas, since he died doing it, he kind of skewed the the average amount of years that an editor stays. So I'm number 14. So the average editorship is 17 years. I'm 2.5 years in. I definitely see myself here for a while.
Do you still learn something new every day doing this?
Yes, every day is a learning adventure, which I think is humbling, but also fascinating.
And learning something new every single day is fascinating. And that's exactly what we're doing out here. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Mueller Metal Roofs and Metal Buildings, for keeping us on the road. Now, you don't want to miss a single story this year as we continue our USA 250 tour right here on the Road with Kelly and Bob. Be sure and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and listen wherever you get your podcast. You can also download that free Odyssey app and listen anytime, anywhere.